All right. Well, hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here once again with Arts Reporter Toni Tresca and a special guest. Who do we have today, Toni?
Hey, Alex. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Ben Raanan from Phamaly Theatre Company. How's it hanging, Ben?
How's it going, guys? How's it doing?
Great.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Exciting to be talking with you first thing this Monday morning. We're recording October 28th. It's about 9 a.m. It's fresh. We've got all of our thoughts on our mind. I've got my coffee here to help me get through it, and I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, this is the big week for, the Halloween, all the spooky season culminates this week, and then we'll be talking about holidays and Thanksgiving and all that. But for now, it's still all Halloween all the time. So in this episode, we'll unpack the shows that we've seen lately and discuss what we thought, whether you should check them out. And then our main topic will be accessible theater. And of course, we have Ben here to help us through this. So Toni, can you introduce Ben just a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned, he is the artistic director at Phamaly Theatre Company, which is the longest running disability theater company in the United States. He began his career in Cincinnati, Ohio, first interning at the Ensemble Theatre Company, then transitioning to second stage director and finally to the education director before he went back to school to earn his MFA in directing from the theater school at DePaul University. We will dig into all of that and more in our main segment this week.
Can't wait.
All right. Yeah. So stand by for a grilling, Ben. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. And then later in the interview, we have Ren Manley, who I think is a repeat guest on the pod. It's been a couple of years, but Toni, you talked to her. What'd you guys talk about?
So we've talked a lot about kind of Audacious's approach to creating immersive work, how it's kind of evolved since it started. We go from kind of the initial time when Ren first experimented with theater back when she was in college, all the way to kind of now and how they have their two types of shows, their trunk shows, as well as their more fully produced immersive experiences.
All right. We'll look forward to hearing about that. So, all right. And then, so now we're just going to do our weekly roundup of what we've seen around the state. Well, since you're our guest, Ben, I'll turn to you first. Did you see anything this week or last?
I did. I think I was a little bit late to the party, but I just saw Dracula over at Arvada, the feminist revenge story by Kate Hamill.
Yeah.
Every city has one. You know, when you get one of those plays where it's like every theater and it's just which theater is going to take that version of the play, and really loved it. I thought the production was exceptional, and Arvada has they are on a string of really strong performances recently, which I love. It also featured a family actor, Mel Schaefer, which we're excited about.
They were great. They were one of the sort of hench people, I guess.
Yes.
A couple of
Totally.
different parts, but great performance there, and with a kind of a sidekick as well. So, what about you, Toni? What did you get to over the weekend?
So my weekend started off with a little nonsense over at Parker Arts. So this is the very well-known musical. It's part of a massive series of nun-related musical comedies.
Yeah.
I had no idea that the nonsense community was so big, but apparently it's got 6 sequels and 3 spin-offs in addition to this one, Nonsense, a Divine Comedy. So this was over at Parker Arts, the Schoolhouse, and it was produced in collaboration with Veritas Productions. So it's a 5-person comedy. It's a little light. I don't know, story-wise, it's very fluffy and kind of just a lot of silliness. But the 5 actresses that they cast over there all did a really remarkable job. I was particularly impressed with Jamie Monalyn and Kaylee Berner, who Kaylee was just over on Parker's stage with Legally Blonde over there, and then Jamie's pretty well known around town. She's often seen at Town Hall Arts Center, the Denver Center, and both of those actresses just really knocked it out of the park.
Great. Well, I know we were also both at Cannibal the Musical at Town Hall Arts Center. So this one's pretty much sold out. So I think it's got another weekend. I think they're doing an industry night on Monday, but great show. I mean, this is kind of a favorite of mine. I've been familiar with this property for many years. I remember seeing the original film that Trey Parker from South Park did back when he was still a student at CU, and this is the stage version, and Stephen Burge directed this. Great cast. They had a drag performer, Mischievous.
Juicy Misdemeanor.
Juicy Misdemeanor, yeah. AKA John Lambert Roberts.
Absolutely.
And fantastic as the horny horse. But also, she also choreographed the show. And his pronouns are all over the place, so I don't know whether to say he, she, or they. He has all three of them on his bio there. But yeah, great job, and tons of fun. What did you think of it? Lots of blood too, right, Toni?
Yeah, very gory. The special effects coordinator did a really nice job making it accurately and appropriately disgusting, which is kind of what you want in a musical called Cannibal the Musical. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. This was my first time seeing it. I had checked out the film version of it in advance of my conversation with the team because I wanted to kind of get a sense of what the original vision was for it, but it was just a lot of fun to see it on stage, particularly since the front of the script says that you can change anything you want, and change they did. They updated. There's a lot of really funny references, everything from like a really silly synchronized swimming bit that they do in the river,
yes,
to updating the trappers and the Ute tribes to be just a little bit less offensive.
Right, because in the original, I think the trappers. Oh no, the Utes were Japanese. I think it was very.
That's
very
correct.
Odd.
Yes. They were so Trey Parker was friends with the Japanese exchange students at CU Boulder, and he asked them if they would be willing to play the Ute people in the movie, and they were super game, and it works. It works for that project, but at the front of the script, there's a note that says you may not be able to have a full group of Japanese people to be able to play them, and maybe that's not even best. So feel free to just change it to however you want. They make it a group of women who are kind of coming in, which I think works pretty well.
I loved the trappers. Also, they were, instead of like, burly guys with furs, they were three women, and they were dressed in like kind of hot pink, and I have to call out the all three of them are great, but the sort of the lead one is Frenchie, and this was played by Shireen Samimi, who was just fantastic. She was so funny.
And I also want to call out Caleb Winger, who is the music director, actor himself, and he has several really funny bits in which he is called into the story in very silly ways that I don't want to reveal, but I just want to say excellent work, and I love the wig.
All right. So yeah, unfortunately, I will note that even though this one's sold out, there's a company out in Grand Junction that's doing this in November for a couple of days. So if you happen to be on the Western Slope and you want to catch a Cannibal at the Avalon Theater, I think November 15th and 16th. And then, so yesterday I took the trek up to Lafayette to see Lafayette Theatre Company of Lafayette's production of Twilight Zone. So this is something they do like every other year or so. They do kind of adaptations of Twilight Zone, originals. This would have been Rod Serling's 100th birthday if he didn't smoke like a fish and die when he was 50. And he's always pictured with a cigarette. So I'm assuming he died of lung cancer, but I don't know. But anyway, it was very much a community theater production. There were a lot of people that didn't look like that had a ton of stage experience, and it was a little hit or miss. There were they did a couple of spoof commercials, one of which was Mr. Clean, and Mr. Clean sort of becomes the sort of this sexy guy that shows up and whisks away this housewife, and along with the husband. So there's this sort of suggested menage a trois with Mr. Clean, which was pretty funny. So that's going on, I think, for another weekend or two. So Toni, you also saw Monopoly. This was really interesting. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this.
Yes, that's right. So I took the journey down to South Broadway in Denver at the Off Center's new space at 407 South Broadway, where they'll be for the next 2 years. And it's in this strip mall section of South Broadway, and the building itself definitely from the outside looks like it used to be a former hardware store, because it did. It used to be an Ace Hardware, beauty store, and other retail shop. But as soon as you step in, Charlie Miller and his team over at Off Center have really done a nice job completely gutting that space, including they had to demolish a bunch of walls. They repainted the ceilings. They had to update the bathroom license and get a new license so that they could put a bar in there. And it looks really good. They've got 4 different Monopoly boards in there, so it's a really massive space, which is it's the biggest space that Off Center has ever worked in and produced a show in. And the experience itself is Monopoly, but in about 70 minutes. So it's a lot shorter than your average game of Monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
You are divided up into teams. Shout out to my partners, Joe and Lupita. You guys were amazing. I loved playing with you guys. They were on my team. We were the T-Rexes, and so we were competing for property. Our team, unfortunately, did not win any properties, because to win properties, you have to go into the room, create and complete mini escape room type challenges. So they're mini games to win the property. And my team was not super good at it, but we did earn a lot of money. So we actually ended up doing pretty well. We were very cash rich, property poor. So just like me in real life, I guess. I have some cash, but no property. So I didn't advance anything. And unfortunately, the attendees said that we couldn't cash out the $2 million that we had earned. Otherwise, that would have been a really, really strong recommend for Monopoly. So it's not transferable to US dollars, as Maggie told me multiple times, which was a real shame.
But it was fun, worth doing.
It's definitely fun. I would say don't go in kind of expecting you to be able to turn your brain off. The mini games are actually quite challenging, and they require a lot of math. So there was a lot more thinking involved, and so it's a much more active experience than I was anticipating, which is cool. I mean, it's immersive, it's incredibly interactive, you're moving around the board the entire time, which is not usually something you can say when talking about Monopoly. There's usually a lot of just seething in anger while people take the other properties around the board.
And is it one of those, is the kind of thing where there's a bar and you can get a drink and walk around the drink, or?
So you can get a drink before or after. They don't allow any food or drink on the board, though. So you can get a locker. So I guess in theory, you could get a drink at the start, throw your drink in your locker, and then come back to it. But I didn't try that myself.
Okay. All right, that sounds great. So the other show that I saw on Thursday, I went out to Miners Alley and saw Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Elusive Ear. And those of you who've listened to the pod, I know Sherlock Holmes is along with Peter Pan, are two of those properties that I like to kind of, I don't know, say that I've heard enough about these characters. But I will revise my assessment there and say that this Miners Alley production is a ton of fun. It's a fresh take. It's got some fantastic female characters who are really assertive. So like Colleen Lee played Irene Adler, who was Sherlock Holmes's paramour, who I guess only appeared in one of the books, but she's a great character to bring back. And she was fantastic. I don't think I've ever seen her on stage before, but she was really great. As was Chaz Lederer as Watson. And so the script gives Watson a lot more to do. He's not just a kind of a yes man. And he's sort of browbeating Sherlock Holmes for doing all the cocaine and drinking all the brandy and making them so that they don't have enough money to live in their fancy flat. And then it's got Ryan Omar Stack shows up as Oscar Wilde, John Brott, Vincent Van Gogh. There's a lot of this kind of like an art lesson mixed in there. And Erica Mori was the sort of Dr. Moriarty's sort of equally villainous daughter, Marie Chartier. And so great show, a lot of fun, and is running at Miners Alley through November 10th. So, all right, well, that's what we saw this weekend. Anything in the old mailbag, Tony?
Yeah, we got a couple of things. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you to whoever gave us our new 5-star review on Spotify. Appreciate that you are enjoying the podcast enough to leave us a rating. That really means a lot.
That's great. All right, thanks for that. So yeah, if you enjoy what we're doing here, definitely leave us a review. Hopefully a 5-star one, but whatever you feel is appropriate helps us get the word out. So what else have you heard, Tony?
So the next two things are a little bit related, and they are kind of following up on the trend of updates from theaters in 2024. So first, after we recorded the podcast last Monday, we heard from Cherry Creek Theater that, quote, due to circumstances beyond our control, we're sad to announce that the fall production of the 2024 season, The Mountaintop, is indefinitely postponed, and all tickets will be refunded. They noted in that announcement that they're going to be taking some time to regroup, fundraise, and plan for additional programming in the 2025 season.
Okay, that's too bad. Sorry to hear about that, but yeah, that's a tough time.
Yeah, and so I followed up with the leadership over there because I was just trying to see if I could get some any additional information. And Megan Dowdery, who is the board president, shared that they'd love to produce Mountaintop with additional funds in the future, but they're unable to do so this year. So they're really just focusing on making sure that Cherry Creek Theater doesn't go away. So they're taking that time to just strategically regroup and make sure that they've got that focus over there so that they can continue producing theater in that space.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you guys. We're rooting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cherry Creek has done so much great work over the years. So, also some more bad news. I hate to have to talk about this, but what else did you hear?
Yeah. So, additionally, on Sunday, Maru Garcia, who is the executive producer at Wheat Ridge Theatre Company, shared that, quote, due to financial concerns and changes on our board of directors, Wheat Ridge Theatre Company will be closing its doors at the end of the year, unquote. So that's a huge bummer over there. Wheat Ridge has been known to take a lot of risks with more experimental programming, new works that maybe haven't been produced here in Denver. So it's really disappointing that they were not able to make it work, and they're going to be shutting their doors at the end of December.
Yeah. Well, they also took a big swing with leasing their own space there. So I'm assuming maybe the lease was up and they were just like, this is just not gonna add up. So I don't know. Well, I'm sure we'll see Maru and some of those other great players from Wheat Ridge in other places. So I wish you all the best of luck. But that's not the end. They got two more, right, Noni?
That's right. So if you want to help send Wheat Ridge Theater off strong, that you have two final chances, including Mind Game, which just opened this weekend and runs through November 10th. That's a thriller, kind of perfect for spooky season. And Scrooge in Rouge, which will be running December 6th through 22nd. So that's their holiday show. So that's your last chance to get over there to Wheat Ridge and let them know that they'll be missed, and just applaud them for all the work that they've been doing. Now,
all right,
on to our main topic.
All right. So, Ben, this is why you're here. So we're excited to discuss accessible theater, and who better to speak to this than Phamaly's artistic director. So Phamaly, just real quick for people who aren't familiar, is spelled Phamaly, and there's an acronym in there. I just recently came across that. I didn't even realize. Can you tell us what that stands for, Ben?
So there actually
originally
isn't an acronym. There used to be an acronym the PH stood for Physically Handicapped Amateur Musical Theater League, and then there was a Y. It was rebranded in, I believe, the late 90s or early 2000s, kind of as Phamaly, took a more holistic approach on disability, and it became not just about people with physical disabilities and visible disabilities, and now we're working with anyone that says they need a more accessible theatrical space. But, the company was originally founded by 5 folks who were all in wheelchairs, so the PH first stood for physically handicapped.
Yeah. I'd never, even though I didn't know that was where that name came from, I always thought it was a great name for the theater. It's just a cool name that's memorable. So, but let's talk a little about you. How did you get inspired to pursue a career in this kind of theater, and how did your time at Ensemble Theater in Cincinnati influence your approach?
Yeah, so I was originally an actor, as I think many directors and artistic directors were, and it was going pretty well. But weirdly, I just kept doing Oklahoma. I just kept getting cast in Oklahoma the musical. I don't know what it is about my flamboyant self that says tough cowboy, but that's what I was doing. And while I do love Oklahoma, I thought maybe there's more to life than that. So I decided, all right, I'm going to, in my last year of college, kind of transition a little bit to directing. So I started becoming a director, and I needed a thesis because I had actually kind of always knew I was a director, so I'd taken all the classes. I just needed a thesis. And I was like, all right, well, what is something you know? Because direct what you know, right? And I was like, well, let's do all of these plays that are out there that have accurate and vital representations of disability, because that's what you know, right? I'm sure there's just a full canon. And to my shock, there wasn't much. You could do Miracle Worker. You could do a bunch of small plays that had never been produced, or you could do like something that's tangentially disabled, like, you could do Oedipus and focus on Tiresias, or you could do Richard, and this was before people actually cared that Richard III was actually disabled. And so there was something about it that just sparked in me, and I decided, hey, like, disability has always been a part of my life, from my own disabilities. I was born paralyzed. I also have autism. And my brother has, really high impact autism. And I just decided, I think this is the moment where I can do theater that is kind of adjacent to myself, or I can do theater that is actually, speaks to what I know and what I love and the people I love in this world. And it took off for a while. And I quickly realized perhaps 1 year was not enough education for me. So I took an internship in Cincinnati, in Ensemble Theater Cincinnati, and their extraordinary artistic director, Ren Manley, who I think is one of the least known but most influential theatrical people in all of the United States, who just had this attitude of, if it's good for society and it's good for people, like, let's do it. And so whenever I would go to all these places and say, hey, I want to do this with disability theater, I want to do this with disability education, she just kind of gave me the ability to test my own ideas and test who I wanted to be as an artist. And so I kind of developed into, originally it was going to be, I do disability theater and everything else. And I quickly learned that and everything else wasn't bringing me joy. And, like, frankly, it wasn't good. I wasn't, like, approaching it with heart and passion. It seemed more like a job to me. So I transitioned, and now I pretty much exclusively do disability theater, unless I'm hired to do a non-disabled play, in which case I just make it a disabled.
So can you talk a little bit about kind of your decision a little bit more about the various roles that you did at Ensemble, and then your decision to go back to school to pursue an MFA in directing from DePaul? What did you learn from that program that you've kind of taken forward with you to Phamaly?
I think it's a great question. On the more practical side, a thing that I am kind of known for is very loud, rambling, long curtain speeches. I've been told I am now known for that, but apparently people enjoy them. At least no one's told me they hate them. And I will say I developed that skill from Lynn over at Ensemble, who said, you've got to help your actors. You've got to have the audience in stitches, or at least going, God, I can't wait till these actors come on stage before the show. So that's the practical side. But I think the more important side of, like, what theater means, Ensemble is located in this neighborhood called Over the Rhine. Over the Rhine is in Cincinnati, and for many years was known as one of the toughest places to live in the entire United States. It was a pretty dangerous place, and for some reason there were all these businesses that would be hurt or destroyed or whatever, but no one ever touched the theater. And Lynn would always say, it's because they know, the people there, that we love them and we're doing our art for them, even if they don't come. And so I think I learned in like, to approach all theater with optimism, to approach all art with optimism, and to realize that the less theater has to do with me and the performers and the more it has to do with the community, the better it is, the more hard it is, and the more kind of inspirational it is, and the more we as a society can move forward if we're creating for our society and not for ourselves. And then, yeah, I just kind of, after 1 year of interning there, I was also unofficially their casting director. Right when I went there, Cincinnati had a huge movie boom that started with, there was a film called Carol that was nominated for an Oscar with Cate Blanchett and
Great film.
Rooney Mara. And I worked as an associate casting director on that because Lynn had done Shawshank Redemption, so that was her like big claim to fame. So when they came to Cincinnati, every movie went, hey, we've got this great casting director. And so I kind of became her associate casting director, and I think I did something like 20 some odd movies in like 4 years. Wild. But doing that, meeting a bunch of actors while also directing for them, while also running their education program, sounds like a lot, but it was something that I was just like, I don't know, feed me Seymour about it, and, you know, keep giving me more and more and more and more.
So now, so Phamaly Theatre Company has a really unique and longstanding legacy in disability theater. And, you know, the last artistic director we got to know pretty well, Reagan Linton, who really, I think, brought the company forward. And then she moved on to some other things. And now you're really picking up that legacy and doing some great work too. But, you know, how would you think about the vision for the company's future? So you just did the first like kind of rep thing with 2 shows sort of running concurrently. What else is you thinking is ahead?
Well, we just announced our 36th anniversary season, which I like jokingly in the announcement. I don't know. I had right before you're about to have a season announcement, like, don't drink 4 beers. Like, what?
Good pro tip. I'll keep that in mind. File that one away.
A reminder. Like, this is why Monopoly says you can't have drinks during the game. There you go. Charlie Miller's very.
That's right.
No, but it worked out really well. But it actually got very emotional for me. Because we are. If the 35th anniversary season was like, let's take risks, let's, you know, think about where we've been and where we want to go. The 36th season is very much like, great, we told you all the risks we were going to do in the 35th season. Now let's actually do them. And so it is filled with, well, maybe I should just tell you the season. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah, run it down for us.
Great. We're starting with 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which at first glance, everyone's like, you just told me it was risky. That's like the least risky show ever. But it was a show that like had been done in the community 3 or 4 times since I've been here. And it's like every family actor went and auditioned for it, and no one was ever getting callbacks. I don't know why, if it was like disability related, but like all the actors would get callbacks for every show except for this one. And so there was something kind of vital to the community about it. I'll be honest, like I'm directing it. And when I was like, at first I was like, okay, fine, I can direct that one. Like that's where it turns out into the season. And I didn't love it. Like I was like, this is fine. This is cute. And the more and more I've delved into it and realized just how much it's about community and it's about 6 weirdos trying to discover their place in the world, you know, I sat there and was like, oh, what a fool I have been.
No, I think that found family aspect that's in the musical is going to be really powerful to see with family actors, because you guys will be doing this again over at North Glen Arts. It'll be in March 2025. You this is part of Phamaly's recent kind of relationship and partnership with Northglenn Arts, which I know from talking with the leadership over there, they're really committed to accessibility and making their space more open to the community. So it sounds like a nice match for that show.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and you want to find. In fact, I probably shouldn't say this on the pod because I need less people to discover them. Because Northglenn Arts working there is like some of the greatest directing experiences I've ever had, and I don't want to be forced out by all these other theater companies. Let me tell you. We're then moving on to a tour with one of my greatest mentors. We're bringing in Kelly Hunter in from London, which will be the first time that Phamaly has ever brought, I believe I should say, the first time Phamaly has ever brought a director and a co-production from another country. We've worked in Japan. In Japan. What am I talking about? Sorry. We've had that partnership for a while, but this will be the first time we're bringing in a production of Pericles, which is one of the most interesting theatrical experiences I've ever seen. It's performed for an audience of 12 with cognitive disabilities, and then there's kind of a perimeter audience that's allowed to watch it. But it's utilizing this kind of applied theater method that from the moment I found it, I want to say maybe 10 years ago or something, it changed my life in how art can be what the actual meaning of Shakespeare is. And I can talk about it and I can explain it, but I would actually say if you are only coming to one show next year, check out Pericles, which is a co-production from Flute Theater.
And so that'll be on tour, like you mentioned. It's going to CU Boulder, the Community College of Aurora, and Theater Works in May 2025. Next up from Phamaly, I know you guys are doing Pippin over at the Denver Center's Killstrom Theater, which I am super excited about. Can you talk a little bit about why Pippin?
Yeah. This idea of carving out your own way in a society that wants you to move in a very kind of specific way. The first words we hear out of Pippin are join us. And it's this constant kind of theme of this beautiful musical of join us. Life will be so much easier if you just join us. We can solve everything for you. And now I'm just naming songs, but this idea of no, I want to find my own corner of the sky, I think is a thing that a lot of the disabled community kind of struggles with sometimes, of how do I find my place, not the place that society tells me I should find. And I'm so excited to be working with Robert Michael Sanders on this. I don't actually, if he had said, hey, I don't know about this play, I don't know if I would have done it. Just because I have such respect for him and the way he approaches working with actors, working with story, and kind of infusing disability into his work. He's a longtime Phamaly actor before he took over at Town Hall.
Yeah, so that'll be in August of 2025 at the Denver Center. And then 2 months later, you're following this up with Dance Nation at the People's Building in October 2025. And I saw in the announcement that Phamaly shared on social media that this was one of the 3 plays that you originally pitched when you came in to put a season together, when you were applying for Phamaly Theatre Company. So can you tell us a little bit about why Dance Nation speaks to you so much and why you included that in your initial pitch to run Phamaly?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the best play written, I'll say, since 2015, but I might even say 2010. I think it is an unbelievable examination of the way our society approaches women, the way our society approaches competition, and the way toxic masculinity kind of delves itself into the world that we are trying to create. It's funny, it's weird, it's very weird. Y'all, it's very weird. if you don't know Dance Nation. But I think in a way that kind of sets apart people who feel different in this world. Directed by Jeree Henneshaw, who is, I mean, if you haven't seen her work, she's incredible.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions about accessibility or a disabled theater that you hear in the community? And what are some of the things that you actually think makes a production accessible? Yes, for the performers and creative team, but also for the audiences.
I think for me, there is a sense in this world that if you can't do everything when it comes to accessibility, you should do nothing. You know, and I think that is a BS idea, to be honest, because I think people want to lump all disabilities together and say, well, if we can't have ASL, then why should we have audio description? And I'm like, well, you know, there are certain audiences and certain audiences come and do their own thing, and programming for each one is important when you can. But just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything. At the same time, I think coming at things with an open mind as much as possible, looking at things that you assumed were fact and saying, but is it? Is that something that fate gave us? You know, I'll use Chorus Line, for example. You know, we had a wonderful number that a lot of people were talking about. If, you know, I Can Do That, which was performed by Casey Myers, who was in a wheelchair, that usually that song is kind of a warm-up, but for this production kind of became the anthem of the song because it's a tap dance number and Casey's in a wheelchair. And this idea of like, what are taps in its essence? It's just 4 pieces of metal that are put on shoes. And those 4 pieces of metal can be sold individually, and you put them on gloves. And actually, it's better because hands are way more dexterous than feet, right? So, like, actually, it's not just finding an accessible way to do it or an accommodation. It's finding kind of a better way to tap and create sounds. And, you know, if you aren't willing to relitigate what you think is fact, which is tapping belongs on your feet, you have to be able to do this and this and this in order to do it, and you just say all tapping is making sounds rhythmically, oh, suddenly a whole new world of possibilities comes to you. And I think that is like the core of the way I approach disability. I look to ask as many questions as possible and try and come in with the least amount of answers in the world. And when you do that, it's actually not terribly difficult.
What advice would you give to directors or artistic leaders who are trying to create those more inclusive spaces in the arts?
As much as I would love to have some incredibly profound answer for you, the answer is incredibly simple, which is talk to people. There was a lovely theater company who asked us, and they're willing to pay us like a lot of money to mentor them because they were doing Richard III and their actress had a wheelchair. And they were an outdoor theater company, and you know, we went through all these things, and they said, but this isn't why we're paying you. What we want to know is what happens if it rains. And I was like, what do you mean? Like I had been talking to them all about disability theory and how to approach rehearsal, and they were like, but what happens if there's mud? How will they get to the stage? And I was like, well. And they meant so well, but this was a serious question for them. This was their main concern of why they had invested money in Phamaly. And I was like, well, what do you normally do? And they go, well, we put boards down so the actors can walk on it. But what happens if their wheel gets stuck? And I'm like, well, you'd have to be in a hurricane for a wheel to like get stuck in mud. This isn't like Oregon Trail where, you know, oh my God, the wheel of the wagon got stuck in the thing. But at the same time, I understood what the question was, which is we are scared that disability is bad. So we have to solve every problem ahead of time. And it came down with me just going like, well, have you asked the actor if they're concerned about this? And they're like, well, no, we don't want to like upset them. And I was like, just have a conversation with people. I work in disability every day of my life for like most of the day. And I know very little about everyone else's body or minds. The only person that's the expert in your body and your mind is you. And that goes for every actor, not just disabled actors.
So, looking at that question kind of from the audience side, are there some misconceptions about accessibility or disabled theater that you encounter that you'd like people to know that, like, this is going to be a good show?
From the audience perspective, yeah, I mean, I think from an audience watching the perspective, like I'll do it in two parts. The first is an audience experiencing disability theater, which is, please don't just come and clap for the nice little disabled people. Like, honestly, I'd rather you don't buy a ticket. Please hold any disability theater, whether you're talking about us, Flute Theater, Oily Cart, Magic Moments, like hold us to the same standard that you hold every other piece of theater. Or else, like, what are we doing here? So I would say that's the main thing that I wish audiences came in with, realizing that we are creating art that is, we hope, important and vital. And if it's not, it's your job to let us know that. Because Lord knows, we charge a $40 ticket. At the same point, from an audience accessibility standard, like, kind of just mind your business, which I think is something that we don't approach in theater a lot. Like, it's always been collective, right? If someone's phone goes off, the phone doesn't actually bother us, right? We could be in Starbucks right now and 10 million phones would go off. The thing that bothers us as an audience is someone had the audacity to make a mistake and let their phone go off, which is such BS to me. I don't know if I can actually curse on this podcast, so I'll just say BS.
Curse away. Curse away.
I'm very passionate about this. But like, it's the reason why sensory friendly and relaxed performances work, is because if you just give permission for an audience to not judge each other and not be a collective against somebody that is different, or someone that has made a mistake, or someone that needs to experience the art in a different way, suddenly it's not a big deal. If you just say, it's okay that phone went off, don't worry about it, the audience like breathes this sigh of relief and they don't have to like burn this person at the stake. And it's the same way for everything. Like, great, somebody's making a little bit of noise. If we create an environment where disability and accessibility and accommodations are okay, no one actually cares that someone is doing that. And if you do care, like, great, you're like a horrible person who is basically ripping away this beautiful gift that we can experience together from this one person.
Wow. It's a rare point of view. Usually you just hear people say, yes, let's burn them at the stake, and that kind of thing. But, like, yeah, if you think about it, like, if you go to like a little kids theater, it's like you expect the kids in the audience to all be like, laughing and talking and things like that. And you kind of allow for that. And if you were to open that up to any other kind of theater, then maybe you don't have to get so bent out of shape. Although I don't know if I'm ready to say that people who can't be quiet or keep their stuff to themselves is still, I don't know. I think it's vexing to a lot of people, no matter what.
It is my most aggressive statement that I make, and I'll send you my 12-page paper on it. You can the next one, you can just read it on the podcast.
Well, thanks for that perspective. But yeah, we're gonna move on. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll do our top 10 Colorado headliners and have Toni's conversation with Ren Manley from Audacious Theater. And Ben, thanks so much for all of that. But stick around. We want to hear your thoughts on some of this stuff coming up as well.
Amazing.
OnStage Colorado gets support from the Colorado Fine Arts Center at Colorado College, presenting The City Dog and the Prairie Dog from November 2nd through 24th. It's a bilingual musical about exploring the world, learning new things, and maybe, just maybe, coming home again. Support also comes from the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company, Betsy, featuring the world premiere of The Ballad of Paula Aguilar. Just in time for the November election comes this smart comedy about ethnic stereotypes, feckless political consultants, and one woman's journey toward personal fulfillment. At the Dairy Center in Boulder through November 3rd. All right. Well, we're back and ready to hit this week's Colorado headliner. So these are some of the upcoming shows that we think you should know about in no particular order. So Ben, we could start with you. Do you have any shows that you're looking forward to coming up here pretty soon?
Confederates over at Curious.
Right.
Sounds amazing. I haven't read the script, but the talent in that cast is unbelievable. And they have just been doing such great work there recently that I am super excited. I think I'm going opening night, I believe. I already have tickets for someday. I'll figure it out.
Excellent. I'm also looking forward to that one. I'll miss you on opening night, which is a shame because we saw each other at Phamaly's last opening, POTUS. But I've got my tickets already for Confederates, so that one is, like you mentioned, great ensemble cast over there, and Curious has been really knocking it out of the park lately.
All right, Toni, what's your first headliner this week?
My first headliner this week is for the 420 friendly among us. It's As You Like It at the Coffee Joint, staged by Bowls with the Bard. So this production company, this is their third effort here in Denver. They previously produced A Midsummer Night's Dream and Cymbeline over in that space, and they're back with one of Shakespeare's most musical plays, As You Like It, which follows Rosalind as she flees persecution from her uncle's court into the forest of Arden, in which she interacts with a lot of various interesting people who have fled the city for various reasons. It's very musical, very silly, very fun. And since this is being done by Bowls with the Bard, you can smoke while you're doing it. So the coffee joint has a dispensary in there, so you can arm yourself with some 420 products before you go in. You can smoke during the performance. The actors will be smoking during the performance. And I've been to both Midsummer and Cymbeline before. It's a really raucous time, as you might imagine, based on the environment. But this group over there, Michaela and her team, they all really care about Shakespeare and making it more interesting and accessible to maybe people who have never considered going to a Shakespeare play. And so when you allow people to get a little bit baked, it doesn't matter if you understand every word.
That's great. And I'm assuming there aren't a ton of tickets for that since it's in a coffee shop. So if you want to do Bowls with the Bard, you should probably jump on that one, huh?
That's right. It's a smaller performance space, but they've got multiple performances running from Halloween, when they open on the 31st, through October 9th at the Coffee Joint in Denver.
All right. Cool. Well, I've got three sort of animal-related headliners. I'm just gonna mention all three of them here. So the first is the City Dog and the Prairie Dog at Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center. So this is for a family show. Lots of singing and dancing and audience participation, and also bilingual Spanish. It's about exploring the world. It sounds kind of like Crocodile Dundee with prairie dogs. So there's one prairie dog from the city, one from the country, and all kinds of stuff falling from that. So that is at the Colorado College Fine Arts Center, November 2nd, all the way through the 24th. And then the next one is at the Denver Center. So this is the Denver Center's, youth theater production, the big one that they do every year. So this is up now. It's called Elephant and Piggies, We Are in a Play, at the Denver Center through December 22nd. And so this is directed by the program's director herself, Alison Watrous. And so this is from a best-selling book, and their rollicking adventure that's jam-packed with new toys, ice cream, trumpets, parties, and wild and wacky costumes. An elephant named Gerald and a pig named Piggy. So all that sounds like a lot of fun, and they always do a great job with those shows. And that's at the Randy Weeks Theater, which is right across from the parking structure there at the Denver Center. And then the next one is way down south at Westcliff Community Players. Westcliff, Colorado, are doing The Squirrels, one of my favorite comedies of recent years. November 1st through 3rd, so kind of a short run. But if you're down south, this is a really kind of a dark comedy about these squirrels that are kind of trying to get their nuts together for the winter. Have you ever seen The Squirrels, Toni?
I have not. Have you been? Have you seen The Squirrels?
Yeah. Aurora Fox did it in their black box a few years ago, and
This is wild, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for it until you told me that those squirrels got to get their nuts together, and now I'm invested.
Yeah. So fun show. So those are the three animal shows coming tonight. Say all three. Yeah. So, Toni, what have you got next?
So I've got a play called Stop Kiss. This is a play from the 90s. It's being produced by Coal Creek Theater over at the Louisville Center for the Arts, November 1st through 16th. And it is a play about kind of homophobia and it follows these two women who are in New York City when they share their first kiss, and there's an attack that takes place afterwards in which Sarah, one of the women, is injured and falls into a coma. And so the play is kind of asking these questions about what do you do when your sense of self and place in the world goes off in new directions. What do you straddle? Do you break, or do you swerve from those convictions and your belief? And so I've actually never seen this play, but I've heard it's a very famous play for this. And so you'll have an opportunity to see it in Louisville, which is just right around the street from me.
Sounds great.
Great play.
Oh, good. You like it? Okay. I've heard from a lot of folks that it's good, so I'm looking forward to checking that one out. Next up from me is a totally different play. It's Gutenberg the Musical, which is going to be at the Garner Galleria Theater in the Denver Center, November 2nd through May 5th, 2025.
That is a
so
long
bit of time.
Holy.
Yeah, holy crap, you have tons of time. You can see Gutenberg multiple times within its months-long run, if you really so desire. And this is the regional premiere here in Denver. It was just in New York, and now they're bringing that production here. It's a spoof of people pitching a big, splashy musical about the inventor of the printing press, Johann Gutenberg. And it's directed by Rodney Liscano, music directed by composer David Nels, choreographed by Broadway dancer Piper Arpan, and stars locals Bryce Baxter and Ethan Lee Knowles. So it's an incredible creative team bringing what it promises to be a very silly musical to life for like 6 months.
And it's a two-hander too, isn't it? It's just two guys.
That's right.
Isn't that kind of what they do there, though? Like that space. And I love it, where you're like, oh my gosh, I can just see this play whenever. What a lovely thing.
Yeah. It's really laid back. It's like kind of a cabaret. You get a drink and you're sitting there, and it's usually they're on the shorter side, 75-minute type thing. So great. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Also looking forward to Buntport. So this is Denver's sort of original troupe. This is a group of people that are wildly creative, and they do everything. And they've got this funny little black box theater on LaPan Street in Denver. And they're kicking off their season with one called Eyes Up, Mouth Agape. And it says, celebrates the 20-year anniversary of a strange pop culture event and is told through the lens of a fictional documentarian interviewing the key players and an innocent bystander, all of whom are large inanimate objects. Sounds like a Buntport play. And it's done in collaboration with Emily Harrison and Square Product Theater. So, I think I'm going to that this weekend sometime, I think. So looking forward to that.
Well, you forgot to mention the disgusting incident that play is centered around, which is a tour bus opening up their laboratory and dumping shit onto unsuspecting tourists, which I thought was just disgusting. I was like, what a premise.
Okay, I didn't know that part, so thanks for ruining it for me, Toni.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure everybody knows what they're getting in. Yeah. That's what Eyes Up, Mouth Agape is. It's Mouth Agape for shit.
All right. Buntport's going rogue. So, all right. What else have you got, Toni?
Got another 420 themed show for you. So I guess 'tis the season of marijuana. Up at the Lincoln Center in Fort Collins, they're producing Reefer Madness, the musical, November 2nd through the 30th. So this was inspired by the 1936 propaganda film of the same name, and it's a tongue-in-cheek look at the hysteria caused when clean-cut kids, Jimmy and Mary Lane, fall prey to marijuana, leading them on a downward spiral filled with jazz music, sex, and violence. So it sounds like every Republican's worst nightmare. So go enjoy this raucous musical directed by Kenny Moten, the legendary director, been seen on multiple stages around Colorado. And I'll be attending the opening night of this musical produced by OnStage Theater to review it, as well as the VIP event afterwards, being hosted by Organic Alternatives, which is turning their private event space connected to their dispensary into a reefer den after the show, where guests can celebrate the show and indulge in their 420 method of choice.
Wow. Okay. Well, on the other end of this, here's one for the kids. Disney Descendants, the musical, is going to be at Steel City Theater in Pueblo, October 18th through November 3rd. So this is the story is about the teenage children of some of Disney's villains, like Maleficent, the Evil Queen, Jafar, Cruella de Vil, and they're on this island, and they get off the island, and so sounds like a pretty fun show. And and Steel City in Pueblo has been around a long time, so I imagine they do a pretty good job. But I haven't been there. One of these days I want to get down there.
Descendants has some like fire music. I haven't seen this production in particular, although I just had a friend that went down and said it was great. But man, music in those Descendants will have you dancing in your seats.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what it was based on the Disney Channel original movie, and they've made a whole bunch of them and they slap so much harder than they ever should be. I guess when you've got Kenny Ortega involved, great director of musicals, it's going to be pretty good. So that's good. My final headliner pick this week is the Denver Film Festival. So this is its 47th year, and they'll be returning with they've got a bunch of films that are hoping to be nominated for Academy Awards this year, including Memoirs of a Snail, Hard Truths, A Real Pain, The Fire Inside, and Night Bitch, along with a whole bunch of Colorado favorites, a bunch of documentaries, animated shorts. So there's really something for everyone here. It runs November 1st through the 10th, and I've got my tickets to a whole bunch of screenings. I am a big film bro. I love watching the Oscars every year. I go crazy with my freaking spreadsheets trying to predict every category. So I'm very excited for the film festival. Are you also like that, Ben? I saw you nodding.
Every year, it's like I certainly don't have time to watch every single movie, but I'm going to do it, and I guess I just won't sleep. Can I throw one more show out there?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, throw it out.
Big fan of what they do at TheaterWorks over at the ENT Center, and Caitlin Lowens, who is one of my favorite directors in the area, is directing Sense and Sensibility, and I can't think of a better production for them. Like, they infuse everything they do with such heart and such like kindness, and I think that is if you don't want to see your 90th version of Christmas Carol, which if you do, amazing, check out Sense and Sensibility, because Caitlin Lowens runs quite the ship over there, and I think doesn't ever get enough credit.
Great.
Good pick. It's a good one to put on your calendar.
All right. Well, that's the headliners for the week. Also, new and upcoming reviews on the site will be, we have Crowns, Kinks, and Curls from Phamaly. I know it's over. We had my occasionally reviewer, Jamisha, get out there, and she had a unique perspective on that is in there. So the Squirrels, I think April is going to get to that one. $1 Million Quartet at Lone Tree, Updating at Comedy Works, Monopoly, Life Size, Twilight Zone, Cannibal, Nonsense, Murders, Bowls of the Bard, Eyes Up, Mouth at Gate, Reefer Madness. So lots of the review crew will be out covering all of these things. So definitely check the website. So yeah, go check out all the reviews plus the latest theater news and the calendar on OnStageColorado.com. So, all right, well, we're going to hear your interview, Toni, with Ren Manley right now. So hang on, and we'll be back on the other side.
Hey there, Ren. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me on the OnStage Colorado podcast to talk with me a little bit about your work as the artistic director of Audacious Immersive. Can you talk to me a little bit about your vision for Audacious since it was founded in 2016?
Yeah, well, basically it all kind of started with a project that I did in college. So in 2007-ish, maybe earlier than that, might have been 2006, actually. So 10 years later, I started a theater company. Basically, I did a project, was assigned a project where I had to take a piece of art and I had to turn it into a performance that incorporated all 5 senses. And I just thought that was so cool. And everybody's projects were so memorable. And that was kind of at the point that I decided that's the kind of theater that I want to make. When I start my theater company, that's going to be my goal, is to incorporate all five senses when we're making theater. And at the time, that this was pre-Sleep No More, so immersive wasn't really like a term that had come into my frontal brain. And even when I started Audacious, I was just trying to do theater that was a little bit more, I guess the term now is immersive, but it was a little bit more engaging with the audience, something that reached out past that fourth wall, and out into the audience, so that they felt a little bit more involved in what was going on, and the work kind of surrounded them a little bit more. And then, Meow Wolf got big and everything else got big. And so we kind of realized that we were in fact immersive, and that was our jam. And so we started to lean into it. And that's kind of what we do now. I think we're a little more theater leaning than some immersive companies, organizations. And I think what we really lean into more than anything else is like interactivity these days. We still try and make sure that we're incorporating all the senses wherever possible, especially because those just fundamentally, that's the way that we make theater that's memorable, in my opinion. But yeah, we are doing a lot of interactive stuff, and doing a lot of like, I guess it's kind of like theater outreach, where I kind of go out into the community, and we're doing theater for people that don't really go to theater. I often say that's kind of my weird counterintuitive business strategy, is that I'm always trying to reach the people who don't normally go to theater for people who don't like theater, which is weird. But it does seem to work pretty well, because I think more people like theater than they realize. And so trying to make it accessible is a big part of it as well. Just finding ways that it doesn't feel too theatery, I guess, if that's the word I could use. Like, I'm a theater kid. I've been in theater since I did like a magnet program when I was in high school, like pretty intensively been in theater for like, I don't know, 20 years now, something insane like that, more than that. But I understand that your average Joe is not as interested in that. And I am very interested in making sure that theater survives for the long term, that live performance survives for the long term. And so finding ways that we can make live experiences, because sometimes you don't want to use the word theater.
Totally. Yeah. There's a lot more folks who will just be willing to go to something going on at the bar than maybe there are folks who are willing to go to like a black box theater or a theater in the round or something like that. I know you and I just saw each other at Audacious's production of Frankenstein that was last weekend over at Fiction, a brewing company in Denver. And one of the things I remarked to you about after seeing the show was it was so fascinating watching like the regular bar people trickle in while the show was performing. And they may have started by not looking at you and just focusing on their drink, but by the end of the show, they were completely turned around and engaged in Frankenstein.
Yeah, we pretty reliably have randos at the end of the shows that were just like in the bar. They weren't over in the area where we're performing. That are like, "Hey, what are you doing? What is that? What was that?" Yeah, for sure. There's definitely. I think another thing. I think Shauna, who's our company manager, had mentioned that it's really great for people that want to bring along a friend who's less into theater, because they're cool to sit there and drink a beer with their friend while their friend is really enjoying theater, and then they kind of get sucked in as well. That was kind of the model. I used to work for this Nightly Spirits, which is the pub crawl ghost tours in Denver. I recommend, super fun. But that was that guy who started that company. His idea was that he wasn't really into ghosts, but his wife was, and so the idea that you had one person that could go that really liked ghosts, and the other person that could just like hang out and drink, that was like a match made in heaven. So that, I think, is part of why the brewery structure works fairly well.
Totally. So I want to dive into a little bit more on your thoughts on what immersive are. But first, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to go back a second to what you mentioned in your answer. I've heard you tell this story about the project that you actually did create for that class that utilized all five senses. Would you be willing to share that with our listeners? What did you create?
So the project that I did was Salvador Dali. I actually had seen it as a sculpture before I saw it as a painting, but it's called The Woman with the Drawers. So the way that my project ended up being was I set up my computer. I had a bunch of different folders, and I put songs into each folder. And then I had the people that were in my class, who were my audience, go and click on whichever folder they were interested in. And then the folder would play a song. And then I had a story from my life, some sort of like very deeply personal story about my life that was tied to this song, to this folder. And I would tell the story about my life. And I had incorporated some cheeses that my father had given me around a story that I had told. I sprayed my own perfume when I got into the room. I guess because basically what I was trying to convey was this idea of like, you're opening this woman's drawers. And so you were literally opening my drawers, my folders. You were finding out about like who I was and in my deepest, sort of darkest, fundamental insides. And yeah, I moved into sound design fairly early, but obviously picking songs as like the baseline thing is a very Ren thing to do. So that was my project.
That's so fascinating. I'm glad you were willing to share that. It's such a cool experience. And I can definitely see then how that would be inspiring to kind of continue to want to make that art. So how did that kind of manifest in some of Audacious's earliest work? How did you initially kind of define what you were doing? And has that kind of shifted over time as the term immersive has kind of come into the cultural zeitgeist?
It has so much shifted. I think when I first started, I really was literally just trying to do like a little thing, right? Like, so the very first show that Audacious did was Grimm's Scary Tales. And, it was, I paid everybody like a share of the ticket sales, and we spent maybe like $500 in the entire production. And we did it at this place called Skylight Station. It's at 910 Arts. It's not there anymore. I believe it's like an aerial studio or something now. But we basically kind of just decorated it as much as possible so that the audience portion was also decorated. We had everybody sitting in chairs and tables. I had like food that I put all together, and we kind of just like had people do these stories. And so it was a little bit more presentational, where like, the audience was still getting that food. They were still getting it was a little bit more like dinner theater. They were kind of more involved. All the tables had settings and things like that, that, made them feel like they were in the forest. And that was kind of what we were going for. And then as time went on and our budgets got bigger and our ideas got bigger and we found different spaces, we were able to lean into it in different ways. So like the second year that we did, so the first year we did it was in 2016, then in 2019, we ended up in this basement of this billiards hall. And it was like, it's a basement of a like really old building. So it had stuff from like years and years and years. And we kind of created this post-apocalyptic version of Grimm's Scary Tales, where we actually were able to lead the audience from like spot to spot, because the area was so big, we could actually take them to different areas, and we kind of set up these different areas. We had this old like racing arcade game chair that we created a throne around, and we have this incredible guy. His name's Ryan Angstead, and he is an engineering guy, and I met him at a friend's party. He said he liked to build things, and I was like, great, I need things built. And he helped us make these incredible things. Like he tied a bunch of like, how when you have a chair, like a metal chair, and then the seat breaks, there was a bunch of those. He tied them all together so that we could make the thorn bush that the thief was trapped inside of. And then, we had Sarah Stevenson is another one of our set people. She had this idea to put sponges with blood on them on the inside, so that as she was like, getting stabbed by the thorns, she would have these blood things on her. So basically over time, we've been able to lean a little bit more into like immersive worlds and kind of going into the next level. At the same time, we've also kind of separated out some of our other productions that are more trunk show style. Like when we started, we were all trunk show basically because the first show that we did we did one weekend. No big deal. You set everything up,
Mm-hmm.
you do it the weekend, and then you set everything down. If you're doing more than one weekend, it's a lot harder to get a venue that's like willing to let you set stuff up for a month straight. So we kind of had started from the idea of like, we'll just set stuff up real quick and then we'll take it all down. It'll be fine. So it was a little bit more traveling in that way. And then as time went on and we wanted to do these bigger shows and we wanted to be able to build some worlds, we started figuring out who were the types of people we could talk to, how could we arrange situations where we could actually take over and decorate a space for a whole month or more, ideally more, because we want to be able to rehearse in there as well. But at the same time, we found Drunk Christmas is our annual holiday fundraiser. We've been doing that one since 2017. So basically, the year after we started, we did our first version of it. It was really popular. And honestly, I had only planned on doing it once. And the guy who was playing Scrooge that year was like, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't do this every year. And he doesn't remember he said that, but he did. And I took it to heart. And so we've done it every single year, and it gets bigger every single year. And I just think just the fact that it has been so popular and it brings in so many people and so many people are just so excited about it. We thought that we would do more in that style in order to basically bring the people what they want. So I think one of the first things that we did that was kind of in that style was space conflicts. That actually came about because I literally had a woman who came to see Drunk Christmas, and then she called me because she organized her company's like annual like a party retreat thing, and they normally have some sort of entertainment. And so she had seen Drunk Christmas, and she knew Christmas wasn't going to be the right vibe, but she was wondering if we had something else. And so that had started my gears going of like, okay, what can I do that's like portable, bookable, and similar in style? And I thought Star Wars was really popular. There's not a ton of Star Wars parody out there already. So that's where we kind of moved into it. And then we just went from there. We have like a murder mystery now. We have our kids show. That one's really portable. That one's intended to go outside, and you can do that outside or inside. We also now have Frankenstein that can go everywhere, and we're kind of basically the idea was this Frankenstein was a test run. We wanted to see if people liked it, if it worked, if it was popular. It's done really well. People really seem to like it. And we just found we had previously been doing our really, really big productions around Halloween every year up until now. And it was just really, really hard to compete with all of the Halloween things that are happening in a given year. And I think I was also starting to feel a little bit locked into having to do our big production around spooky things. Like, I'm a spooky person. I love all that stuff. I've been celebrating Halloween since September. But there's lots of ideas that we've all had that are not necessarily Halloween oriented. And so I kind of thought that it would make more sense for us to do something that was a little bit lower production costs, where we could make sure that everybody was paid. We would be able to go to all of these breweries that have their own audiences and want to come see things like at that brewery. And then it kind of frees us up to do larger, bigger things at other times of the year. And so we're not also like literally having a big Halloween show right on top of Christmas.
I'm so fascinated by this Audacious's model here. It's kind of the two types of shows. Your trunk shows that are traveling, portable, can go often at breweries or other kind of unconventional theater spaces, a little bit lower cost for you, versus the more, I guess, large-scale immersive productions that often like last year, for instance, your big Halloween show, The Haunting at Your House, was at the First Baptist Church of Denver. Massive production there. You guys took over basically the whole building there. I can imagine that's a lot more expensive. Is that a kind of intentional part of how you guys budget and approach, is kind of dividing them up by using these trunk shows to supplement the maybe lack of income that comes from these larger scale immersive shows?
Yeah, certainly what we're hoping is that's how it will work. I think kind of my logic right now is that, these shows that are more portable, that are bookable, these are the things that can make us money. Whereas the bigger shows in reality are the things that we do for our artistic enjoyment, for our artistic fulfillment, so that everyone on my team gets an opportunity to kind of stretch their creative wings, and the people who come to see our shows and have really started to appreciate those larger scale world building events still have that sort of production from Audacious that they can attend, that we haven't completely shifted gears into just doing these smaller, more portable shows.
Yeah. So for folks listening at the moment, Audacious has one more production of its current touring run of Frankenstein on Halloween itself, where Ren, you're not only on the leadership for this production, helping bring it into existence, you're actually playing Dr. Victor Frankenstein. Can you share a little bit about what that's been like, and to kind of find that character?
Yeah. So I'm not usually in the shows. I've written a lot of our Halloween shows. I direct a lot of the Halloween shows. But occasionally there's a reason for me to be in it. And honestly, I just thought the idea of like a lady Frankenstein, even though our version of Frankenstein is not really, I mean, we use all male pronouns. We haven't shifted anything to make there's still something to it. We all agreed to like be watching a woman in this role of like the birthing of a brand new creature. So in terms of doing it, it was a lot. This is going to be the first year that I'm not going to be in Drunk Christmas, because I just needed like a little bit of a break, because I did Frankenstein. I'm the main character. I have 50% of the lines. Maybe 60, something like that. I have a lot of the words to say. So that was a lot. I also did the sound design, and with these trunk shows, the sound is a really, really heavy part of it. Seeing as it's one of those immersive elements that we can create that doesn't actually take up physical space. That's always the thing we have to figure out, is like, how do we make this immersive without taking up extra space?
And your sound design was so freaking creepy. There's one in particular, like the bones snapping in there, it chilled me to my core, Ren.
I love it. I live for the moments where my sound makes everybody go, oh, yes. That's part of the reason that we started doing the Halloween shows, is because my background is in sound design. Like, I was a professional sound designer in Philadelphia before I moved here, and I was doing sound design with the Edge Theater when they were a thing. And so I just wanted to do spooky shows with sound, because that's the most fun sound to do. But yeah, so for Frankenstein, I had a lot of work to do just with like getting all of the sound, and because it's more of a melodrama, there was more music to it and some more underscoring than is typical. I also do the makeup for Frankenstein, for like the creature itself. So it was just a lot of work, but it was so much fun to actually get to be in a show for once, to like memorize all the lines and learn all of the blocking and the fights and the getting to actually like be in a scene with everyone. With interactive immersive shows, like with The Haunting of Your House, each individual person is just they're basically a tour guide. So they don't really get to do scenes with anybody else. They're just working with your audience, which is so fun. And everybody who works with us, they enjoy that part of it, that being able to engage directly with an audience. But there's certainly something different about engaging in a scene with another actor that I really got to explore and have fun with in Frankenstein, right? With the creature, we have these scenes where we're basically arguing with each other about whether or not I should make him a lady Frankenstein, a lady creature. There's just so much more engagement with each of the people on stage, and it's a little bit easier for us to kind of get an ensemble vibe going on these sorts of shows. But yeah, it was super duper fun. A little bit exhausting, but honestly, I'm really glad that I got to do it, and very grateful to Logan for believing me when I was like, you should do it for sure. Like, a lady Frankenstein would kill her, it'd be awesome, it'd be great. So yeah, it was super cool. And I spent a lot of time reading. I read the book, so I knew like fully what everything to do with the Frankenstein character was behind it. Watched a lot of Frankenstein movies, read a lot of articles and stuff about it. I honestly had never read or really thought about Frankenstein until we did the show, because it was just like not. I was a vampire girl. I'm still a vampire girl, but
Mm-hmm.
I have such a deep love now for Frankenstein, and the language is so good. It's like I love doing Drunk Christmas because Charles Dickens, his language is so good. It's so fun to say. It's so fun to Mary Shelley, also so good, so fun. There's just so many great lines. I think one of my favorite ones is my promise to the creature weighs upon my mind like Dante's iron cowl upon the heads of the hellish hypocrites. Like, oh, Mary, so good.
Yeah, I think in a lot of the kind of more modern adaptations of Frankenstein, you really forget how much poetry is in Mary Shelley's original work. But I was really impressed with Alyssa's adaptation that she did for you all. She really did keep so much of that original language, and I think, like you said, it really does help elevate the piece itself. So next up for Audacious is, as we've already talked about quite a bit, Drunk Christmas. So, and you said this has been on since 2017. So did you guys do it over COVID as well? How many years has Drunk Christmas been?
We did it over COVID. We didn't do a live version. We actually have a home video version.
Uh-huh.
So I was the narrator. You can still download it off of our website. I was like full on drunk history, hammered drunk, doing my job as the narrator. And then I had everybody who was like on our team who's been doing Drunk Christmas for forever. They all kind of sent me their scenes and I cobbled them all together. So we did do Drunk Christmas over over COVID. We just did a home video version, and then we did it
Mm-hmm.
immediately afterwards. So we've done it every single year.
So this is the 8th year of Drunk Christmas.
Yes.
Wow. And so where all are you guys going to be performing this year? Where can folks check you guys out?
Yeah, so Odell's is going to be our first showing. Then we're also going to be at Fiction Brewing in Denver. Fiction is the first place that we ever did Drunk Christmas, and so it's a little bit smaller venue, but we will always do it there because they were the first ones that were like, yeah, come do it in our space, please.
Well, and I mean, Fiction also has all of those lovely books all around you, so it's a kind of a perfect vibe for Drunk Christmas.
Exactly. I loves me some vibes and aesthetic. So yes, perfect. It's also really good for Frankenstein, right? Like any show that we do where we're focusing on the literary aspects of it, Fiction is kind of a perfect fit. Especially because like their audience is a bunch of book nerds, right? They've basically kind of taken they're like a book club brewery, which I think is a great model. And so it's easy to basically say to them, hey, we're going to do this book, but as a theater show. And people are like, yeah, they're there for it. So we're doing it at Fiction Beer Company in Denver and Fiction Beer Company in Parker. And we're also going to be going down to Lone Tree this year. They were very excited to have us. So we're trying to spread it out. And we are even going to be having one show at the Alamo Draft House at Sloan's Lake. So we are all over the place this year. We had so many breweries that wanted to book us this year. We unfortunately we added some shows and mostly had to be like, I'm really sorry, but we'll put you on our list. And then when we schedule everything for next year with all of the shows that we'll be doing at breweries, we'll be sure to let you know. It was a little tricky probably the first year or two. If you ask anybody on my team in general, finding venues is the hardest thing. If you ask almost every single person who works in the theater industry in Denver, they will tell you that finding venues is the hardest thing. Another reason why the brewery shows are great is that it is a huge weight off of my mind and Shauna's mind as the company manager, as people who have to find the venues, that it's fairly easy for us to just contact people that they get it already. They're like, yes, absolutely, we would like to have theater happening in our space. Come and do it. Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess breweries who are interested in having Drunk Christmas performances in 2025 should start reaching out now.
They absolutely should. You try and stop Shauna. She is a machine. She had all of the breweries for this year at the beginning, January of 2024. She was like,
I bet she did. She's great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ren, for taking some time out of your day to talk audacious, theater, immersive, and everything in between with me here on the OnStage Colorado podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado podcast. Toni, do you want to tease what's going on next week?
Sure. So next week, we will have your interview, Alex, with Abby Apple Boes, who is a well-loved fixture on the Colorado stage. And Abby has a cabaret coming up at the Aurora Fox and will also be directing 2 upcoming shows at Miners Alley and Firehouse. So what else can you tease about that conversation and what you discussed with her?
Oh yeah, all those things. Definitely talked about kind of like the nature of cabaret itself, how she got involved in it, and how how it's just an art form that she really loves, and as well as some of the things that she's involved with, and Abby is one of these people that's just like, not only she's always busy doing theater, she's also very present. She goes to see everybody's shows. I often see her out there. Great conversation. So definitely come back for that one next week.
Yeah, so lots of exciting things are on the way. If you want to stay up to date about what's going on in theaters around the state, subscribe to OnStage Colorado Podcast wherever you get your audio stuff. And if you like what you're doing, please tell other theater lovers about us in your life. If you want to support us, please consider donating. There's a link under the resources tab on the website.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. Ben, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was great to have you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Toni. Y'all are amazing, and thank you for everything you do for our community. Truly.
All right. Well, I'm Alex Miller.
I'm Ben Raanan.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we'll see you at the show.
Yeah.